Yes, he did. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it look like any
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Voters in the county decide not to join the city of Manchester. Among the topics we're going to discuss on this edition of Donnybrook. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's meet the panelists. From the Big 550, KTRS, Wendy Wiese. From the Post-Dispatch, Bill McClellan. From Substack and the founder of the Riverfront Times, Ray Hartmann. And from the St. Louis American, Alvin, Reid. Well, Wendy Wiese, I was pretty surprised when 80% of those who voted in St. Louis County decided not to join the lovely city of Manchester, Missouri. It was an annexation proposal in front of voters this Tuesday, and people in the county did not want to become part of that suburb.
I don't know if it's even that so much as our built-in aversion to change. I think that that's kind of where we are. My husband and I had our daughters in Manchester. We lived there for 6 years. We loved it. The police protection was great. I think this is simply people who everybody's kind of, or Sam Page's office seems to be taking credit for it. But I think it's just as simple as that. I think it's aversion to change.
Well, I kind of agree with you, and I still think that there has to be a better word than annexation out there, because it just always sounds to me like this is the kind of thing that leads to like World War.
Russia, yeah. Like
and so I know, and I think people just are like, no, I don't want to be annexed. And you could present a viable argument as to why this is a good idea. And they would still say, like, no, I just don't want to be annexed. Technically, Beecher Park was annexed into Kirkwood, but, Beecher Park was always part of Kirkwood, but it was independent, and St. Louis County Police had to, like, patrol Beecher Park, and Kirkwood. So it just made sense, but there were, people that did not want to be annexed.
It's kind of an endearing quality about people here.
Yeah.
They would say, I didn't buy a house in Manchester. So and it's also good for the St. Louis County Police Department. I mean, this speaks well for them that those people said, hey, I'd rather stay with the county police.
But an equal number of people, of the Manchester residents, they wanted them so desperately. It wasn't it 80% of
They wanted sales tax revenue.
Yeah, well, sure they did. Yeah. Absolutely they did.
Yeah.
But
I think Manchester was selling itself as saying, with small government, your life will be better. I don't think people buy that. I don't think they think that a small town is going to provide all sorts of better things.
I would have voted, if I lived there, I would have voted to enter Manchester. I would have, because it did make sense. And that's one of those where, like, I'm kind of surprised that the vote was the way it was, because I would try, maybe I may have done a bad job of trying to explain to them why it would be a good idea, but it would have been a good idea.
Are you suggesting that the people of Manchester didn't just like those people?
Well, you know what? It is one of the smaller municipalities. I think when you stack it up against the 1,000 other municipalities around here, and I think that there might even be a little block-to-block rivalry, or somebody's on the city council that doesn't like. I mean, it could be a wild speculation.
Well, I'd be suspicious now if I was in the county out there. Why do those people want us so badly?
Well, Charlie just gave you the reason.
Something going on.
Yeah,
they like the county council meetings.
Hey,
Ray Hartmann, great column this week on a sad subject. We lost a terrific broadcaster, Donn Johnson, who had worked for WIL. He was a broadcaster who called the Spirits games with Bob Costas, as you pointed out. Many years with Fox 2, and then with the Missouri Historical Society. Passed away this week at the age of 76. And I hope folks see your Substack column on him.
More important, I think I did not know him. He's one of those people that in the media for a long time, not really that well personally, but just a guy that always had a smile on his face. Everybody liked him, and But when I sort of looked him up, I didn't realize that he was, you know, and I'm not disparaging people who read news on TV, but he had a real career as a reporter, as a journalist, particularly covering DSEG from, I think it was 78 to 83. And a great legacy, a great guy, and he will be missed.
Proud Beaumont graduate, went to school at Webster, grew up here, worked here, knew the city, which, you know, obviously a lot of people don't know now who cover the news, but just an absolute gentleman and will be missed.
And his dad was a janitor, as I recall. I mean, he was a real success story, Donn Johnson, classy guy.
He was, and I was fortunate enough to work with him for several years at KTRS with Dan Deerdorf, and he was one of those people. Obviously, a fabulous journalist. He was skilled at human nature and interviewing people and getting right to it, and just a refreshing. One of my most pronounced memories was he came into the studio one morning and he was totally perplexed. He said, "I saw the best show. It's really, really weird, but I have this feeling it's going to be a big hit." And he couldn't shake this thought about this show. He said, "It's called The Sopranos." He said, "It's really weird. You can't tell if the mother is a good girl or a bad girl." But he was just a delightful man, and his wife Erlene and his daughter Lauren knew exactly how much he loved him.
And our thoughts and prayers are with them. Visitation tonight, services tomorrow, and Bill, we also lost a stalwart from the police community. Mike Guzzi passed away.
Yeah, well, Mike Guzzi was a well-regarded detective, and then he was the assistant in the sheriff's department, actually ran the sheriff's department, and he wrote a weekly column in the Post-Dispatch, kind of general interest stuff, and then was a columnist on the Beacon, so well known in the community, and a droll sense of humor and a terrific writer and a really good fellow.
And I would say Mike would write about some, you know, police issues, and you could disagree with his take on it, but he wrote it in a way that was very law and order-ish, you know, like the TV program now, where it said like, oh, okay, that helped me understand maybe where the police or the prosecutor is coming from on this. I may disagree, but he really had a really good knack for that. I always read his column. I always read his column.
Well put.
And he was also somebody that would, you knew him much better than I did, but he was well respected enough that after he retired, he was still being brought in to like big cases where they were reviewing. He was being brought in just because of his expertise, even after he retired. So he was quite a guy.
He was not with us on Next Up, unfortunately, but Donn Johnson was. And before the night is over, we're going to play a small clip of Donn Johnson from January of this year when he was with us on 9 PBS. Wendy, I want to ask you about your alma mater, Fontbonne University. It's not looking good, according to one story. Actually, the Riverfront Times had this story, so did the St. Louis Business Journal and the Post-Dispatch, that the school is running a $5 million deficit, and there are about 650 undergrads at the school right now, which is way down. At the end of the article, some experts said, well, Fontbonne should just tell the students that they should find their education elsewhere. As an alum, what are your thoughts?
I think his name was Gary Stocker from the College Viability app, whatever that is. It is kind of fortuitous that I wore my purple because that's school colors, but it breaks my heart. I'm not surprised because you get to be this age and you see everything changing around you. What is really alarming, because I think that anything can happen, and I certainly think that Fontbonne can weather this storm on behalf of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. This is their legacy, the Mother House on Minnesota, and they've been so proud of that and the work that they've done, and the women and then men and women that they've educated for centuries. But the fact that they're thinking of doing away with the deaf education program, that is what drew people from all around the world to Fontbonne. So I would implore them to rethink that decision. But I think that a small liberal arts university is going to have challenges when you're talking about tuition, annual tuition in the neighborhood of $26,000, $28,000.
I think this is where you call on the Fontbonne graduates around the world. I think together they could come up with $5 million in 5 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating. It's a fine school and it's been around a long time.
Yep.
And if you're talking about a school that size, 650 undergraduate students, and they're faced with closing the school, come on, save the university. Most of us went to big, gigantic universities and still give them money.
Right.
And in the back of your mind, you think, like, they really don't need my money, but I'm more than happy to give it to them.
Well, I think it'd be a short-term fix, though, an infusion of money from alums. I think the future, like you were saying, Wendy, does not look bright for a small liberal arts school, landlocked like it is.
Right.
And, you know, maybe if it was in Galesburg, Illinois, like Knox College or something, it would attract certain people. But in a city, I don't think there's...
I like Alvin calling out Wendy and the other alums. I like that.
I'm sure Wendy is doing her part.
Just $5 million.
But larger than just Fontbonne, we've talked about the St. Louis rep is in danger of going out of business. Webster University is having troubles right now. Is there something to the idea that St. Louis doesn't have the Fortune 500 companies and really the population? In 1980, we were the 12th largest SMSA in the country, and now we're 25.
No, it isn't that. I'll tell you, that when you talk about these kinds of concerns, and let's hope Fontbonne seriously can make it, in each case, it's going to be the industry they're in, the profession. It's going to be how they interface with the new digital age. I mean, there's just other factors. St. Louis, I mean, for all of our lack of growth, it's not a dying market. It's 2.8 million people. It's not about that. It's about the specifics of a it's not about, like, gee, if we had a few 100,000 more people. It's really about the problems that small colleges might have, but that's generic. I don't think it's got to do anything.
But I think there were feeder schools.
Absolutely, and those families that were a part of that feeder system used to have 6, 7, 8 kids. Maybe not all of them, but many of them. And now those families are having 1, 2 kids. And that definitely has an impact.
I think most of the kids that went to Dominican University in Chicago weren't Catholic.
Yeah,
even though it was Catholic University.
Right.
I don't know what the student population is like at Fontbonne, but that might be...
They used to have a lot of Indonesian students and Saudi students recently, but, you know, with COVID-19, a lot of foreign students decided not to come here. And for better or worse, Donald Trump didn't encourage a lot of students to come here either when he was president.
I thought you said Donald Trump went to Fontbonne.
No, he went to Fordham and Penn. Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about, I think it's a group of 4 retailers have banded together in a lawsuit. They're suing St. Louis County because the new county rules say that you can't sell tobacco, a killing substance, near schools. And they're saying, well, you can't take that away without reimbursing us. That's just the state constitution. You can't take away property without reimbursing us. Do they have a case here?
Well, I think they make a good point, you know, because they're arguing that they're going to eventually sell these stores, and if you reduce the value of the store, it's not fair to them. Now, on the other hand, you could argue, well, if you're not selling cigarettes to minors, how does this really reduce the value of your store? And that's a hard one to argue against, I think.
Well, I think that, okay, you're driving along, as you do, Bill, and, you know, like, you're thinking to yourself, like, I got to get a pack of cigarettes or, you know, some cigars. And so, like, well, I know not to stop along this stretch because they can't sell them. And so it's not the business that you do all the time. It's the business that would just stop in and, you know, grab a pack of cigarettes. Listen to me like I'm Joe Convenient Smart, you know. But I think you have to, like, grandfather some kind of thing where these people that are already doing it can continue to do it until they sell the store. Or,
but I think it is grandfathered.
But it is. But I'm just saying that if, you know, until that time, I mean, you just can't take away somebody's right to sell something and especially when you can still sell liquor. That was the point I like.
I am so confused by this argument that we keep having and hearing about. Is there some mystical thing that draws us into, visitation was just like a block away from 3 gas stations that sold cigarettes and beer, and we didn't,
But you did smoke.
No, but I was.
You did.
Oh, because
as an
of
adult,
that.
as an
Because of
adult,
that. No, Charlie,
as an adult,
I agree with Wendy. It's like this whole concept.
This
First of
art-
all,
this-
even school children today are quite worldly thanks to the online world we live in. But this whole concept of proximity to a school.
Exactly.
I'm with you. It's like I don't quite get what. Anybody that sells cigarettes or alcohol or whatever to a minor should be shut down. We all agree on that. The point is, it's like I don't even understand why that's a thing.
Why do we keep
it's like,
I'll tell you why, because the study shows that the studies show
that a
when
kid's gonna drink because there's a
when a retailer sells cigarettes close to a school, there's a greater percentage of students in that area who smoke. It was in the reporting
That might
in
be
your paper.
coincidental, Charlie.
I
know.
It's a killer substance. Why are the 4 of you defending people who sell the biggest reason people die in the country?
I remember in high school that there were kids who smoked, and they didn't smoke because there was a place close by to get them. They smoked because they thought it was
They thought
cool.
it looked cool. Exactly.
And the other way you could look
That's-
at that is people who sell cigarettes will probably locate in areas that they think people will buy cigarettes. And if a school happens to be in that area, it doesn't necessarily correlate that they're in a high smoking area.
What kind of
it doesn't mean that
chemical
kids
compounds are sold?
It's
Are you like secondhand smoke close to
I
school?
can't think of anything that's sold that's more addictive
If we all
and
think
deadly
that.
than cigarettes. And the 4 of you have no problem being near Jack and Jill when they go to
Charlie,
school.
I think alcohol.
Statistics are
I think
going
alcohol
down.
could fall into that category.
Well, don't look. I mean, you look at the biggest causes of death in the country. It's cardiac disease, heart disease, and cancer.
Yeah, but the biggest cause of car wrecks are people not smoking, but people eating and drinking.
And drinking. I mean, you're not going to smoke 5 cigarettes and then run into a wall.
All right, Bill McClellan. What about Sam Page? He's the county executive for St. Louis County. Now, this is a little bit of civics. We might be getting deep in the weeds or inside baseball, but he has not been showing up for county meetings. I mean, misses like 2 a month and has for about 6 months. But the county charter says that he has to attend the meetings, and he pledged when he took over the job that he would attend the meetings, and he also excoriated his predecessor for not attending meetings.
As I remember, Sam Page said that he was going to give the county council the respect it deserves. and one can argue that, well, that's a campaign pledge. And a lot of the times, I don't get upset about Sam Page missing meetings because he can send an aide there, and the aide can come back and tell him. I'd be more upset if it was a board member missing meetings because they're actually doing the work, whether the county executive should have to sit there and listen. Ray, you look puzzled.
Should the president be at the meeting of the Joint Chiefs? I mean, it's like he's the county executive. If you ran for the office, do the job.
It's real simple. I'm not upset. I just think if you do not wish to serve as county, look, everybody knows he's sacrificing hundreds of thousands of dollars, in fact, as an anesthesiologist. He can make a lot more money, and I say that with, full respect for that profession. And, the county, this is the same guy the voters had to did a overwhelming referendum saying, you can't have a side job. And now, I guess his response is, I'm not going to do if you're going to be like that, I'm not going to go. And I mean, I think he should, honest to God, I think if he doesn't want to attend meetings, he should resign and let somebody be county execative who wants to do it.
Unbelievable.
It's just, you just don't get to not do it.
It's in the charter.
It's in the charter.
That's why I can't defend him because it's like, say, it's in the charter. I do. Bill, good civics lesson. He's not a member of the county board. I understand that. Let me finish, okay? But if for no other reason than symbolically, you got to go to the meetings. You got to go. I mean, how many times does the vice president vote when there's a deadlock in the Senate? She doesn't need to be there half the time, but she has to sit there. And she looks like, oh, my God, I'd rather be someplace else right now. But, you know, no, that's how our country runs. So, dude, go to the meeting.
Okay, well, now, what did you think about Wesley Bell, the county prosecutor, who did not attend a board meeting this week, the county council meeting, when they were going over his office's budget? He had representatives there. One of them, I think Sam Alton, said that Mr. Bell had a birthday over the weekend and they had something else to take care of on Monday. Should the county prosecutor have been to a meeting discussing his own office's budget?
I mean, in a perfect world, yes, but I think that's kind of an apples and oranges comparison.
I agree. And
it's not in the charter.
I thought it was bad form for Mr. Bell not to be defending his office.
Well, but also, but now I run the office, but I don't run the budgetary part of my office. You know, that's, I mean, if there is some, in any administration, if some offices run some way, it's like, yes, it all comes back to the man or woman who is in charge, but at the same time, you know, you said like you're charging too much for paper clips, you know, or like, come on, man.
I think a budget representative
Me
is
too.
perfectly appropriate,
Yeah.
and I mean, they're not talking about Congress anyway, so I mean, no.
Good one.
Okay.
Good one.
Alvin, I want to ask you about the city of Clayton, which has an equity commission trying to further diversity, equity, inclusion. And one of the proposals they're looking at is to have bilingual signs in the city of Clayton, perhaps with English language, Spanish, possibly even Mandarin or some Chinese language. What do you think?
Well, I think that that's a nice idea, but I think that's for people that don't live in Clayton. That's for people that are just driving through, or they're in Clayton, they've flown in from some other part of the country, and they say like, boy, they're really enlightened in Clayton and in that St. Louis because they have all the different languages there. Not welcoming in the least, you know, like you say, like, hey, I don't have any money, I want to buy a house in Clayton. Well, they ain't gonna work, dude. So, you know, it's nice, but I think it's more for show than it is actual equity and inclusion.
But you make a great point that it helps. I mean, if some out-of-town businessman comes in and gets the idea that it's kind of an international scene. I mean, it doesn't matter what the sign says. It could say, get out of town.
You know what also helps?
You can't afford it.
We're just lying, right? Is that what we call it?
If we are, in fact, the melting pot, then why wouldn't we have signs in different languages?
You know who would also help?
I agree,
People-
but
it
Clayton
helps.
isn't a melting pot.
Well, I tell you, Alvin, who it helps.
Maybe it could be.
Okay.
If he gets a hold of it.
True.
If he gets a hold of it, somebody like Senator Eric Schmidt, who routinely tweets about the evil of DEI, and it will. I predict at some point someone will get a hold of it. It's not, to me, it's of no consequence either way. It's fine, but somebody will. I imagine get hold of it and say, see what they're doing again? They're taking away our language. It's just that's how it'll end up being an issue.
But is it a substantial effort? And
I don't know.
Kind of to Alvin's point, is it kind of window dressing, saying, look, we are so inclusive, but if the city doesn't, for example, say, hey, we're going to set up some Section 8 housing, or we're going to invite Mexicans from Chicago to move here, we're going to make some housing for them. If you don't take those steps to make sure that it's really inclusive, you just put up the signage, is that really doing anything?
Every journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Oh,
So I mean, honestly.
No, you're right. And why does Kirkwood and other places have when their high school wins a state championship? It's on the sign there. And I mean, like, we kind of already knew we won the state championship. It's for somebody else, but I'm glad it's there.
You're
So I
just
just
being
refuted my own
Bobs
argument. Right. But
of negativism.
okay.
Exactly.
But I just think it's for more than actually, you know, being supportive of people from other lands.
Some people think windows were meant to be dressed.
Right. I mean, the airport, like, when you know, the airport's got like 20 languages on there, of which we
That's exactly right.
speak 3 in St. Louis,
It
probably.
just seems to me there might be more substantive
There
things
definitely,
that
no
the
one's
city could
arguing
do.
that.
No, you are arguing that.
Maybe
Of
this
course
is
not.
the
You
first
brought it up.
step. Baby steps.
All right.
I
Got the
agree.
topic up.
Well, I do want to mention a couple of things. Number one, you can follow us on Threads now. And if you follow Donnybrook STL on Threads, which is kind of a counterpart to X, formerly known as Twitter, if you do so before next week's show, you might be eligible to win some exclusive Donnybrook merchandise. We talked earlier about the loss of our colleague, Donn Johnson. who was kind enough to join us for the program Next Up in January of this year. We thought we'd share a small clip of his appearance as you saw him earlier.
DJ, even before Michael Brown, even before Ferguson, you know, you were one of the people who were constantly having that discussion about race. Are you optimistic? Do you see, I mean, through the efforts towards diversity in the media at least, are you optimistic at all?
I am optimistic.
More so than before.
And I'll tell you why. I think the people that I run into, the people that I see doing for each other across racial lines, across social lines, tells me that the message that we are all in this all together is resonating to some people's minds. I've seen minds actually changed about certain things. So, yeah, I'm optimistic. I think it's going to be a while. It probably won't be in my lifetime when it's the way I'd like it to be, the way Dr. King saw it. But I think it will happen. I think my children's children may get to experience that.
The late Donn Johnson. We lost him this past week. You can revisit that episode of Next Up at 9pbs.org. If you'd like to write us, you can do so. Care of 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org and X. Use hashtag DonnybrookSTL or on Threads now. You can also call the 9 line at 314-512-9094 and listen to us on your favorite podcast source, Google, Spotify, TuneIn, and Google Play. That completes this version of Donnybrook. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week at this time.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.